I'm sure you've noticed over the last couple of years that when you go and have a meal at a restaurant, you get these tiny little greens on the side of the plate or sprinkled over your salad. Those are called microgreens, and they're so easy to cultivate. And the beauty of having microgreens is that you can grow them in a sunny spot in your kitchen and can have them 365 days a year. And in 14 days, you'll have a crop to harvest already. Now, the fabulous thing about microgreens is that not only do they grow really quickly, but they have that flavor that comes through exactly like the mature plant. The thing is you've got to know what to use, and using tools that are absolutely spotlessly clean is really important because they grow so quickly and grow so closely together. There is the risk of molds and fungi, so you've got to make sure that your tools are spotless. When you're making your microgreens up in terms of what you want to grow together, always use the same crops because you don't want things to germinate at different times. So for example, if you're going to microgreen some sweet basil, you can use different kinds of sweet basil, but always make sure that you keep the same crops together. For example, you don't want to microgreen sweet basil and fennel together because fennel takes much longer to germinate. So we've got some great combinations here. We've got radish and turnip and rocket, which all belong to the same family, the cabbage family, and they all germinate at pretty much the same time. We're going to mix those together so we can get a different flavor combination as well as different texture. We're also going to do sweet basil, two kinds. One, the typical Genovese, the pesto variety, sweet basil, and the purple variety. They germinate at the same time, but they give us different color leaves, which are going to look spectacular. So purple and green leaves together. I like to use these trays. They're about 5 centimeters in depth, and they do have drainage holes, which is really important. Our soil mix, I'm going to tell you all about that in a minute. As you can see, I have one tray prepared already, and I'm going to prepare the other one so you can see exactly how it's done. So let's talk about the soil mix. We always use the same soil mix, and we find that it's really useful in pots or with our microgreening. So it's 2 scoops of organic compost, 2 scoops of good potting soil, 2 scoops of vermiculite. What vermiculite does, it holds the moisture in the soil and it makes spaces for oxygen, and 1 scoop of worm castings. Now the worm castings are really important. Even though the little plants don't stay in the trays for very long, the reason why we use worm castings is because it's antibacterial and antifungal. And with seedlings, you always run the risk of having a fungal disease called damping off, which can kill your crop overnight. So we don't want that to happen. So I'm going to fill this tray now for you. Quite simple. You want to really fill it up to the top because you want an even surface. So that should do it. There you go. Oh, a little bit too much. Just even it out. Lastly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sieve the same mix just so that I have a light, smooth layer on the surface. You don't need a lot of that. Kind of evens things out. And then I'm going to tamp it down gently. I use this flat piece of wood to do that. Make sure that everything is flat and even. There you have it. Now I'm going to do 2 different types of microgreens. The one is I'm going to mix my sweet basil, the Genovese green leaf basil, and the purple basil together. When I do this, I probably use in total about 1.5 tablespoons of seed, and that's quite a lot of seeds. So you want to go for seeds that A, are good quality and have a really great germination rate, and B, these seeds, luckily you've got thousands of seeds in a packet and you need a lot of seeds to do this. You want to sprinkle them evenly, but you also need them really close together so that when they germinate, you've got tufts of green and no holes. You don't want open spaces at all. So I'm going to mix these. I really want to get that mixed purple and green leaf, it really does look attractive. This is really about 1.5 tablespoons. You can't really go wrong if you overdo it. The secret is to get them as evenly distributed as possible. The next tray, I'm going to mix turnip seeds, rocket seeds, and some radish. For this, as you can see, the seeds are not much bigger than the sweet basil, so I'm going to use about the same, 1.5 tablespoons. When these seeds germinate, they all look absolutely identical. They are tiny, tiny little seedlings with 2 cotyledon leaves that come up. So you won't actually tell that they're a different crop. Besides the radish seed, you can see completely different to the others, but when they germinate, they look all the same. So now we're going to water it. It's important to use a watering spout that has small holes so that you can have a fine rose spray. You don't want to displace the seeds after taking so much trouble to get them evenly distributed. You want to keep them that way. It may take a little while to get the whole tray watered, but just persist until the watering is absolutely perfectly done. And the way you can tell that is when the water drips through the bottom of the tray. There you go, I can see the water coming through the bottom here, so I'm going to stop. You're probably wondering when I'm going to cover the seeds with soil, but I'm not at all. That's the trick about microgreening. You leave this just like this, and all you do is you take a black plastic bag and cover your trays. You can either put your trays in the bag, or it's much easier to just cover them. What you want to do is you want to get the light completely out of the way. You don't want them exposed to light at all. So you cover them with a black plastic bag and you leave them for 48 hours. You do still have to water your trays, so during the day, during the 48 hours, you use your small watering spout and you water your trays. I just want to show you how these sweet basil seeds have already started to swell, and they look like little tadpoles. They're so cute. So now I've got that done. I'm going to cover them with a black plastic bag. It's important to keep them in a warm, sunny spot, obviously. And tomorrow, at the same time, I'm going to water them again, make sure the soil is damp. You don't need to have the water dripping through completely. You just got to keep it damp. And the next day, I'm going to do the same thing. You will notice after 48 hours that your seedlings will start to germinate, and they'll be really pale. And obviously, that's because there's been no sunlight, so there's been no photosynthesis. If your radish seeds and your other seeds take a little bit longer to germinate, leave them covered with the black plastic, and when they start to germinate, you can remove the black plastic altogether. In about a day or so, you'll see that your little seedlings will start to go green. In about 9 to 14 days, you are going to have your first microgreen crop. When you start harvesting, you can either harvest a little at a time or harvest the whole tray. The truth is that they won't regrow. So once they are done, once you've harvested them, you're going to have to start all over again. To make sure that you've got a continuous supply, it is a good idea to start again in a week's time to get your successive crops growing. So as you can see over here, we've got a gorgeous little combination of our own microgreen herbs that we did. We've got some sweet basil and cress, and we've even got some pea shoots, which I really enjoy. Once again, remember that once you harvest them, once you cut them off, they don't regrow. Follow these simple rules and you'll have a forest of microgreens in your kitchen. Just remember, don't use treated seeds for this. Treated seeds are normally pink or blue, so you want to stay away from those.